Hello. Hi. Hi, everybody. Thank you very much again for staying and attending this conference with us. So we'll have our pack talk with our gentleman and lady. So we'll talk about several topics, and I would just invite each one of you to just briefly introduce yourself. I know you, Jimmy, already did it, so please introduce yourself again. It's always a joy listening to you.
I guess by now you are tired of hearing my voice. Was Jimmy, was and you just heard from me, so hi.
Okay, my name is Falk. I'm running a brand innovation consultancy in Shanghai and teach at the Chinese Academy of Art.
And my name is Sophie. I'm working in market research agency and I'm expert in packaging and shopper understanding. The name of the company is VIVO.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. So we'll start with a very on-point question. We already discussed, and we've seen people talking about this, but we'll dive deeper into this topic, which is a very interesting one. How can brands retain their soul while innovating design? So we'll have this answer, the question answered by different angles. So I would like to invite Jimmy to, from your perspective, how does Pepsi crack this?
No, ladies first. So how can brand retain souls while innovating? I think, as I mentioned in the presentation, people is the starting point. If you are designing for Chinese consumer, you need to be respectful for who you are designing for. So the starting point is always about understanding who is the final target for whatever you are designing. And then you need to be able to understand who you are as a brand. I think one of the biggest problems that we have nowadays is that, oh, blue is the new color, everybody go to blue. Oh, red is the new color, everybody go to red. And the brand start to lose their identity. So if you know who your consumer is, if you know who you are as a brand, then it's just a matter of ensuring that you are taking those true information and then you are landing with a compelling story. The importance of storytelling is crucial in everything we do that is relevant to the people and to the brand.
Wonderful. Sophie.
Well, I would say you're right, but there is something that is true, is that a shopper behavior is all about fast decision making. So we need to make sure that everything that we do maintain the brand cues. Brand cues are really important. If you are Coca-Cola, you know that red is really important, and then you can do whatever you do with your logo because you have the red color that is your identity. Same with Pepsi. You have all the products are really strong in showing some brand cues. When you have some brand cue, you can play around your brand, but when something is not clear, you have to be really careful and follow what shoppers are doing on shelf, what they are looking for, and that will be leading the decision making.
Wonderful.
I guess if you look over the last years, the playground has become much bigger, right? When I studied, we were told you have one key visual and you work with this key visual for 100 years ideally, right? Nowadays, we've seen this in the presentations, Pepsi, you start playing around with your logo. We would not have been allowed 20 years ago, right? So I think the playground has become bigger. We can do more things because brands are more established, right? People know about the brands, people know what brands are stand for, and as long as you actualize all this again and again in different forms, that's, I guess, the perfect middle ground.
Wonderful. So Jimmy, could you share one example of a successful practice or a lesson from your company? How was Pepsi able to retain the soul while moving forward and while innovating?
I mean, you saw some of the great example on how, on a regional level, we were able to land a successful story. You saw the example from Pakistan, Bangladesh, China, Saudi Arabia. So it's clear that once you understand your consumer, you can create a tailor-made solution that fulfill them. I think the challenge happens when you're trying to have a global impact with something that meant to fit everybody's taste. And I think in our world, what happened last year was the first of in many years where we launched a completely new rebrand of a brand like Pepsi on a global level at the same time. So if you see the new Pepsi logo and the new Pepsi identity is completely different from what we had a couple of years ago, and that's something that we have been roll out globally at the same period and the same time. And it was something that was very risky to do, to be very honest, because you don't know how people react. And this is where partnering with the inside team, partnering with those that are able to test the product with consumer become crucial. Because you can go arrogant and say, oh, I am Pepsi and I can launch everything because people love me, but the reality is that there are a lot of choice out there. So whenever we are doing something that is all about innovation, you want to test with consumer, you want to feel their reaction and understand what is their current status of mind, whether they like it or not, what you're proposing them. And then, of course, it's a risk. I mean, everything we do, it's a risk. Every design is a risk. You can't predict the end result. The only things you can do is, as I mentioned before, understanding consumer, understand your brand, believe in yourself, and share a compelling story. That's pretty much the way how we land innovation to the shelf.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Sophie, from your point of view, we heard from this beautiful, big brand that is Pepsi. What about smaller brands, challenging brands, people that are coming? They probably have a lot to lose if they take the wrong step. And from being in Asia for 8 years now, I noticed that Asia is a very risk-averse mentality.
Yeah, there are different aspects to consider. It's about first the nature of the product. When we talk about PepsiCo, it's all about emotional context. We have some really strong emotional brand, emotional cues that makes that it's not easy, but you can create a shopper reaction that is positive to your product. But when you are toilet paper or something like that, emotion is not there. So you need to understand what is a shopper mindset and to fit with a shopper mindset. You cannot be beautiful on every category. You need to be efficient in the way you communicate to shopper. If we think about e-commerce, for example, e-commerce is all about price. Some of the brand, Coca-Cola, PepsiCo, are showing big quantity with a good price. But when you are on the chocolate category, you need to be more emotional because your product is a bit more pricey. So it's really about being able to adapt the shopper mindset and to be there to understand what they are looking for. For small brand, when they arrive on a market, your challenge is to stand out. The brand doesn't have the same awareness compared to a big brand. So the challenge is not so much about the branding, it's about the product expression. So you need to have and when you arrive with a new brand, it doesn't help to showcase a big brand because it's new and doesn't have any connection with the shopper. So you need to adapt your strategy to be more product-centric, to be more emotional if you are in a category that is about emotion, and to connect a little bit more and to stand out a little bit more easily.
Wonderful.
Yeah, a couple of things. I thought a lot about the word "glocal" when you said complicated things become complicated when you work global, right? And there, a lot of things have changed over the last years again, right? Because a couple of years ago, everybody was looking to do things as global as possible and as local as necessary, right? That's this one culture, American-driven marketing universe, right? Over the last couple of years, a lot of Western brands in the East, in China, have realized that's not what's working anymore. We are in a multipolar world where you have to be as global as necessary and as local as possible, right? And I think there, you both worked in the beverage segments, right? And in the last years, innovation did not come from Coca-Cola and from PepsiCo in China, right? Innovations came from local competitors, and that's something very new for Western companies here.
Very, very nice point of view. Thank you very much, Falk and Sophie and
I'm
Jimmy?
not 100%
So you
sure
disagree?
that is an accurate statement, but
Of course.
I hear that.
So this is a panel for discussion. Can you share your point of view, how you think there's another way?
I think I'm a deep pro-China person in the way how I really see the way how this country evolved over the course of the past decades across every industry, from technology, automotive, branding, design. And the reason is because over the course of the year they were able to really prototype on the real world everything that they were actually designing and working since many years. In the world of food and beverage, I think that the innovation is coming from everywhere. I think both local player and international player are innovating equally in the way how they are landing new product on the shelf. The relevancy might be different. If you think about our brand Lay's, that is one of the biggest snacks brand in the world, the amount of innovation that we are playing in China in terms of flavor, segmentation, and the overall collaboration that we are doing with local player is unique. There is no brand in China in the snacks, chips world that innovate as much as Lay's does. So I think that, as I say, everybody are prototyping new solutions. Some is more successful than other, but I wouldn't say Western innovate more than local or vice versa. I think each area has its own pocket of expertise, but the reason why Lay's is successful is not because it's an American brand. It's successful because it's an American brand that operates in China, so effectively it's almost like a Chinese company that design for Chinese consumer. And that's why the flavor that you have in Lay's in China exists only in China.
That could be the same for Oreo, that is having exactly
Correct.
the same strategy. Oreo is one of the, well, China is one of the biggest market for Oreo. And it didn't start from China, but they changed the strategy in China. It was really important for Oreo at that time to adapt the strategy to fit better with the consumer needs. And that's the reason why like Oreo is like almost everywhere, and probably one of Oreo China is one of the most successful products from Mondelez.
Yeah, and that's an interesting point, right? Because it shows how the world of marketing has become multipolar, right? Inspirations come from very different places and not just from one direction.
Which is amazing. Like Jimmy said, being a designer and working in this industry is fantastic. And I often say that there has never been a better time to be a designer and to be in this industry like today. So thank you very much for your answer.
I want to be a designer now.
We are creative people, so
I'm creative.
There you go. Thank you very much for your answer. So this is a very good segue about how can we balance classic heritage with youth appeal. How can we be a long-standing brand, but also appeal to new generations and keep reinventing itself. I think Jimmy has shown beautiful examples. I'm so envy of the work that Jimmy shown. But can you talk a little bit about that? How can you keep your heritage, keep your positioning, and still appeal to the new generations and reinvent yourself year after year?
I think there are multiple questions in the question. I would like to start by the principle that I don't believe in great design without a great brief. And this is something that people sometimes forget. In order to create an amazing design, you need to have an equally amazing brief. And the brief is where everything starts. Brief is where you need to be transparently on and lay down what are the problems that you are trying to solve to be sure that whoever is designing them is able to understand them. Now, the reason why I'm saying this is because Nuno mentioned how can you remain classic? So the question is, what does classic mean? Most of the time we receive briefs that are make it look premium. What does premium mean? What is premium for me is not premium for you. Because if you're having a pack that is all white and minimalistic, maybe this is very premium in Japan, but it's not premium in Russia, where in Russia, premium is all about gold and bling bling. So I think it's important that First thing first, you really define the problem that you are trying to solve in a simple and clear way. One of the brief sentence that make me laugh all the time whenever we are receiving is making Instagrammable, meaning make it something that can go on Instagram. And I was like, which Instagram? My Instagram or your Instagram? Because my Instagram page is different from your Instagram page, and what you follow is different from what I follow. So what they are trying to do is make something that looks so good that people want to share. That's the real ask, is not to make it Instagrammable. So it's important that as you are defining the brief, you are as clear as possible. Design something that can work in tier A city in China is different from design something for tier B and tier C city in China. Once you know that, and once you have that very clearly defined, and once you know who you are as a brand, then it's a matter of creating option and test with consumer, understanding what's consumer reaction. So it's not just because we are designer, we create one and that's it. It's all about understanding the brief, creating your story, test with consumer, and then risk in launching the product.
Fantastic.
Let me reinforce one thing, and that's the question of meaning, right? What does things mean? Is one of the most important questions when you talk with consumers and try to find out strategic directions. And you have to accept that meaning changes, right? And that's something that's not heard a lot, not heard enough. But meaning of brands changes, meaning of symbols changes, slowly, faster, but things change. So you have to ask again and again and again, and not just take your knowledge from last year for granted.
Fantastic. And Sophie, we know that brands, when they design, when they finally go to shelves, is when rubber hits the road. How can we crack that? How can we make sure that Gen Zs are engaging with our brands? How can we still be relevant for them in this day and age, which is complex and it's moving faster every day?
Like I'm going to talk about the brief, because like we have like the research brief as well. It's really interesting. It's about like always like the challenge about like I want to be more premium. I want to be more modern. But what does the shopper want? And that's the question. Being premium, it's always like the nice things to have. But in reality, you cannot be premium for premium. You need to bring a value. If you have like exactly the same product and you put gold everywhere on your design, it just be the same product, gold, and looks more expensive. And that's really interesting. It's about like how to create value out of premiumness to make to be relevant. We are okay to have like a nice premium packaging for Gen Z as soon as it's answering some of the code of the generation. You have like different way to capture Gen Z. It's about like design for sure. And then you need to know which retail you need to activate. You have like a standard offline retail, you have e-commerce, and you have like social media. In the way where you communicate will change, you need to change the tone of voice, and you will get a different target. If you look at some of the communication on social media, you don't arrive with your standard product. And I think it's the same story about like a Pepsi going like in a premium angle for bar. If you take like a basic Pepsi and you put it on the social media with the same communication that you have on e-commerce or in-store, it doesn't work because you need to adopt the code of the retail environment in which you are. So capturing Gen Z is about having the right tone of voice on the design, making sure that what you are building about like premiumness and modernity is relevant for shopper and is associated with value, and making sure that like you adapt your strategy to the retail, because like you cannot communicate the same way, and you need to make sure that like, the product is relevant where you put it. We were talking about the context. The context is extremely important to create engagement.
Fantastic, Sophie. Thank you very much. That's a very good segue for my next question. And this is my question, and I'm not following the script anymore.
I didn't know.
Apologies. Now, it's a very good provocation because I would like to ask, how can brands bridge the offline and online experiences? Because we would start with you, Sophie.
It's difficult because like you are a job to be done that is different according to the channel. CVS job to be done is different from hyper super, is different from traditional trade, is different from e-commerce, and it's different from social media. E-commerce, and I've been to India and I've met some e-commerce players, and they are we know about like what is the challenge in the e-commerce context in China. It's all about like convenience and price. The question today is that like because you are communicating a lot about convenience and price, you are losing the value of your product, and it's difficult to change the tone of voice and to create like a little bit more value. What India is doing is about like they are going for like extremely speed delivery e-commerce platform. So that means like you order something, you get it in 10 minutes. They do it by proximity of the store place, and so that means like they are not talking about the product anymore. They are talking about the convenience. When the channel is using some word that is not product-centric, this is why it becomes like extremely difficult to bring back the communication around the product. When we talk about like some premium wine, champagne, chocolate, you can bring back the value because like the price expensive will be like what makes the value of the product. If you go for like a cognac, I don't expect to find like a 10 kuai cognac. I want something like really expensive. When it comes to FMCG, that becomes the challenge. So you need to adapt the right strategy to the channel, but like have like the right fight. If you want to bring value somewhere, you can bring value on social media and in-store activation. And e-commerce, you need to adapt.
May I give the question back to the two of you? Because is this still a question you discuss internally in your companies when it is about bridging online with offline worlds? Because when I look here in China, those people, especially the young people, move so seamlessly between those worlds, right?
Jimmy.
One of the things, if maybe the most important things that I learned by living in China is the concept of and. In the Western world, we have this. Sorry. In the Western world, we are very narrow-minded. It's or this or that, or white wine or red wine, or beef or fish. And the things that I love the most about China is the idea of and. Can be this and this. You can have in the same meal fish and meat, and it's okay. I think the way how I would answer to the question is I don't think that is or offline or online. There is always the end. We need to think on the 360 of everything we do if, obviously, that's the strategy of the company. Now, in order to do that, you need to understand who is your target, as we mentioned before, and then you need to understand how that specific platform works. Because the way how Redbook work is different from the way how Facebook work, or Instagram, or WeChat, and so on and so forth. So you need to understand the consumer. You need to understand what is the platform algorithm and how the platform work. And then even in the offline world, working for 7-Eleven, Carrefour, Walmart, they're completely, although they are all physical environment where you buy the product, the context is very different. If you're designing for Sam's Club, there is a very different type of consumer than those that goes to Carrefour, and those that goes to Walmart, and those that goes to 7-Eleven. So although we talk about digital and physical, the reality is that in the digital, you have different brand. In the physical, you have different brand. So effectively, we need to design for each one of those, understanding who they are. Because the consumer that goes in Sam's Club, they might expecting from that shopping experience something that is different from if you're going to Carrefour. So if we start from these premises, you understand consumer, you understand the context, then you need to understand yourself. And as understanding yourself means that if I know who am I as a brand, and I know what I stand for, and I know what I represent for our own internal vision, mission, and what people think about me, then it's just a matter of translating my value based on all those channels, respecting the channel look and feel. I make a very simple example because this is like very easy to understand. Instagram in the past was utilizing only square shape image. If you were designing for a platform that utilizes vertical, you can't utilize the same vertical on Instagram. You need to resize for Instagram. So you need to be respectful to the platform that you are partnering with and understand what are their parameters to ensure that you land some effective message.
There is two notions that are important, and I think one is about like being able to adapt. Adaptability is like the most important notion, but you cannot adapt without knowing the job to be done. Job to be done is about your category, about your product, but about the channel as well. You are talking about like Sam's Club, we are talking about like Instagram, Facebook. The job to be done on every retail environment is different. And you need to understand each of them to be able to have like a agile adaptability to each of them.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, all of you. So we'll move on to our last topic, which is the key factors behind successful packaging refresh. This is particularly important in this fast-moving world. So Falk, from your perspective, what would you say would be the key factors for a company, a brand to refresh its packaging design?
Yeah, I think cultural empathy is most likely the most important one. If you look at global scale, right, that I am able to meet the expectation of different cultures, but not only from our point of view, but also from the different designers in different countries have different ways of looking at those things, right? In China, you have more this model of incremental innovation, so they usually try to be very, very careful with those things, right? Whereas in other countries, you have a much more disruptive attitude to innovation, where you do bigger steps. And I think the common answer is there is this middle ground you have to find. But depending on from which culture you come, you have to look in the opposite direction.
All right. Almost like being a contrarian is what you need to be today. Sophie, from your point of view, what would you advise us to prioritize? Is it the design aesthetics? Is it the consumer preferences? The shelf impact? What is it? What's the secret? We all want to know, and we want to go back and use that secret.
There is one secret. You need to tell like an amazing story in 3 visual signs. So I mean, like you need to tell your brand, your product, and make like people dream about the product with 3 elements on your pack. Because like when we take decision, everything is going like pretty fast. You need to be relevant with the category codes, and you need to make sure like you can be like extremely disruptive in terms of visual code, but most of the time it fails because like shopper mindset is really fixed, and when you enter into the shelf, you don't have time to look at every single packaging. You need to you deselect and then you select. If you are not fitting with the shopper code, you will be deselected. You need to be fitting with what shopper are looking for. Then you need to communicate like instantly your message, and you have to consider like people are taking decision in 3-4 seconds. So it needs to be really straightforward. It's really, well, of course, it adapts to some of the category. If you're like I'm working quite a lot on the beauty category as well, and sometimes I look at the design, there are like so many words. But even in this category, you need to make sure that the 3 most important words are really perceived instantly, because they are the ones that are creating purchase. So lace pack are really interesting because like it's a lot of like color coding that makes that you recognize like from really far away. There was like a branding that makes that you make the link, and you have like a product representation that really stands out from the pack. And if you are like on some of the local lace, you have like some cultural code on the pack that make like you create a little bit more empathy around the product. So it's really, what we say most of the time is like simplicity is the best asset for you, and you need to make sure that you are using like the right code to tell like an amazing story. Like when you go to when you tell a story to your kid, you want the story to be fast because you want them to sleep. If you take like 3 hours to tell the story, they will never sleep. Well, they can because your story will be boring, but like, and it's the same with the packaging. You need to be like really smart, efficient, and short.
That brings us back to the power of and, right? Because at the one hand, you have to make sure everybody knows that you belong to the category. Yeah. On the other hand, you have to stand out of the category, right?
And the story that I'm telling is like, if you're like a big brand, your logo is telling everything. If you're a small brand, you need to be focusing on the product experience. And it's really like Heineken doesn't have to show the brand anymore on the pack, because we all know that green in the beer category is, well, except in China, because it can be Tsingtao, but like, we recognize Heineken most of the time, but not everybody is Heineken, and you need to be able to convey something different when you're like a small brand.
Wonderful. And what about you, Jimmy? Do you think simplicity is still the ultimate sophistication?
No, I'm trying to go from a different angle, that it's something that as a designer we are not really good at it, and is understanding the commercial side of the work. The PepsiCo China design team is among, if not the most award-winning design team in China. Now, you can check online and tell me whether I'm wrong, but the reason why I'm saying this is because among the many awards, over 440 that we won, there was one project that was able to win the largest amount of that. And the fun factor is that this is the project that I consider my biggest failure in PepsiCo China. And this was in 2014. We launched the Pepsi Challenge collection during the summer of 2015. Now, this is the most awarded project that we did in China in the past 10 years, and yet I consider this to be the biggest failure of our 10 years of PepsiCo China. Why? Because when you're defining success, you need to be clear on what does success means for you. Is it about sales? Is it about media impression? Is it about design award? Is it about simply like that you can get on social media? In our case, it's clear that success means sales as well as design recognition. So we excel on the design recognition, but we fail on the sales part. And why? And that goes back to my first point, the importance of understanding the commercial and the sales side of the job. Because that campaign, and if you go on Baidu, you will find Pepsi Challenge China. That campaign meant to celebrate 5 different passion points of Chinese consumer: movie, music, sport, entrepreneurship, and I don't remember the last one. But the way how we visualize them is each passion point has a different color. The music passion point was orange. The sport passion point was green. So effectively, we were trying to be provocative in the way how we change the color of our can to celebrate a passion point in a unique way. Why we fail? Because we didn't talk with our sales team up front. So the sales organization, they received those cans with those colors, and they had no idea what was the meaning behind. So as those cans arrive in the store, the shop owner and the store owner, they start to see, oh, Pepsi Orange, I put next to Mirinda and next to Fanta. Pepsi Green, oh, I put next to 7-Up and next to Sprite. They didn't understand that this was one campaign, and they start to think that this was just flavor or color. And this was impacting our sales because people couldn't find any more Pepsi on the shelf because they didn't recognize Pepsi for what they knew Pepsi was. Now, what does this mean? Did I regret that we changed the color and we try something provocative? No. I think as a brand, sometimes you need to be brave enough to challenge the status quo and try something new. I regret that we didn't talk with the commercial team and the sales team before, because first, we could have learned a lot from their insight. Second, we could have educated them, that they could have educated the distributor to let everybody understand what was going on with that color. So, to conclude, in order to be successful, you need to define what success is for your brand. Once you define what success is, you need to be sure that you include every single team that can contribute to to the creation of that success. Because as I say, one of the biggest problems, I don't know how many designers we have in this room, but one of the biggest problems of designers nowadays, that they just look at the pretty picture. And they don't understand the business, and they don't understand the real important things that is consumer, business, and what are the real world out there, and not the beautiful screen picture that you can draw and design.
Fantastic. Sophie?
Just like I've seen a lot of Instagram packaging that are like really good looking, but like 90% of the case are failing from shopper because like it's not what you are looking for. You can be Instagram when you are on your phone. When you are in shelf, you want something that is good, and that's really like it's always like the difference between like some of the design agency that want to go for really beautiful, and market research agencies that say, oh, it's beautiful but it's not efficient. So, and it can be better efficient if we have like a activation shelf, right merchandising, right training of the team and everything. But if it's only the packaging, beautiful, depend on the category, is not always a win.
Yeah, I think the big discussion when it comes to the question, how does success looks like when I redesign packaging is, what do I consider the packaging to be, right? Here in China, we still have a lot of brands that look at packaging as an advertising space, right? I try to put as many information on it and hope to convince people, right? And I guess for quite a few brands here in China, it would be better to look at the packaging as what it is, a brand asset, right?
For the communication, you have communication tools. So you need to make sure that the pack is doing the job of the pack.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, the three of you. I will just now open the floor for some questions that you may have for our speakers here. I would love to hear from you. Does anyone have a question? This is the right opportunity, guys. These people have so much to give, so much experience. This is really, really valuable. What we heard today is, I learned a lot from you guys today. So I'm taking notes mentally, and I'm going to write them down because I may forget about them. But it's very valuable what you told us today. But does anyone would like to also ask a question? Because this is the right time.
We have someone.
We have someone. We have someone there. I'll
it's
go.
okay.
All right.
Hi.
I don't need to run. Thank you.
Thank you for your wonderful discussion and the whole morning. Yeah, I just have learned a lot from your wonderful sharings and a lot of sorts. Actually, I have one question for Jimmy. Actually, after your session, I heard one very interesting quote. It's about the selfie stick. And yeah, and that one, it reminds me of one sentence in China. It's called 时势造英雄. It means the right product innovation appears in the right timing in the history will make much more sense than if in the right time. So I think in this era where we are in, it's a bit complicated, and we can all find a lot of information on social media, on the internet, and the age is also changing pretty fast. So yeah, it could also be a question for you all, like how do you read this era we are in? Like what do you see can be the right thing that should appear in this time in the history? I just would like a piece of your personal thoughts from your experience. Thank you.
Well, thank you for the question. I think if we were here 10 years ago, similar question would have happened, meaning that every time is always not the right time. I would like to answer with a metaphor. And it's a metaphor that to me is very important because it's around the concept of luck. Imagine we are a seed of any fruits. Imagine an apple seed. The goal, so how this apple seed is going to become successful is if that seed become an apple tree. Correct? You are an apple seed and you want to become an apple tree so that you can create apple. Now the first things for the seed to become an apple tree is to be aware that that apple seed is an apple seed. Meaning if the apple seed thinks to be a banana seed, it will never generate apple. So the first and the most important things to start any new business is to be aware of who you are. If you know who you are, that is a great starting point. If you don't know who you are, it's going to be very difficult for you to be successful. So that's the first step, the self-awareness. I am an apple seed and I want to generate apple tree and apple fruits. Now, that's obviously not enough, because if you are a seed, what do you need? You need a context. You need the right soil, and then you need the right environment. If you are an apple seed, and you know that you are an apple seed, but I bring you in Dubai and I put you on the sand, it will never come up an apple tree. Simply because the sand is not the right context. Simply because the weather is not the right weather. So you need to be aware that you might have self-awareness, but you are in the wrong context. And when I talk about context, it's not just geographical context. Maybe it's also, as we just talked, digital or physical. Maybe you start from digital and then you go physical. Maybe you start from physical and then you go digital. But the important thing is that you understand the context and you choose the right context. Now, you might say, well, thank you, Jimmy, I got it. I know what seed I am, I need to be in the right context, and now the apple is going to come up. That's not true, because there is the third, and it doesn't sound scientific, but it's maybe the most important one, that is luck. You might have the perfect seed with the right awareness in the perfect terrain, and for that year, it rains every day. If it rains every day, the tree will never come out. If it stops raining and it's sunny every day, the apple tree will never come out. What does it mean is that weather, that it's something that, although sometimes we do control, but we can't really control, it's something that will determine whether the right seed in the right context is going to create the apple tree. And that's something that you don't control. That's about luck. So to answer your question, first, you need to be aware of who you are. And you need to be aware to the point that if people tell you you are wrong, you need to stand for who you are. Because you need to believe in yourself. And if you believe in yourself, other people might believe in that too. The second is identify the right context. Don't worry whether now that place is trendy and I need to be there. Maybe that's going to happen later. Start from where is the right context for you to grow this tree. And then it's about luck. And then things can turn out well or things can turn out bad. You can't control that. That's the beauty of the world, right? Every day is a new discovery and is a new experience.
And I think Bruno said something in his presentation that fits perfectly to that. What we should be aware of is that we have all the information we need. All the data are there. What we miss is the understanding, is deciphering it, is finding the meaning behind it, the wisdom, as you said, right? And I guess that's a point to add to your metaphor.
And I'm going to add something as well. It's really interesting. We think that the world is changing, but actually the world is evolving. So that means like we are not changing like from like a purely physical world to a purely digital world. We are still like the old model that is still here and has really remained strong on the market. So we are adding each year a layer of channel that change or that is making a evolvement of the channel. But it doesn't mean that the old one is dead. It means that you need to adapt your strategy to make it like evolving slightly. There are like two things that are important. It's about like you were saying how to make like a good design is to be able to do a long-lasting design that is survive to the world change. And I would say like if we are like in China, it's about like a good design is a design that is able to survive to a channel fast-moving process, but doesn't mean that we're going to lose everything else. We need to adapt. And you have like two tools that you can use. First of all, you need to observe what shoppers are doing. You need to observe like the ratio of like people who are doing offline, online. We know that 80% of people are doing both of them. And then there is something we didn't talk a lot about, but like behavioral science is amazing to help you to predict the future. Because like the future is not like a big change, it's just like evolution of the current change. So by using behavioral science, by observing what people are doing and being like aware of the sign, then you can have like a long-lasting design thinking process.
I totally buy into the science part. I'm not so sure about things not replacing other things. When I studied, I was told media management, no media will replace the other. That was at a time where people read newspapers, right? So I'm not so sure about this, but what is important is that new things are not coming out of nothing. We are not God, we are not creating out of nothing. We create in combining things in a new way, and I guess that's where the continuity comes from.
If you look like, okay, hyper super, smaller and smaller, they are dying, and if you go to hyper super in Shanghai, it's always like really empty. We are still like a lot of in-store activation, and it's always fun to have a look at it. It was replaced by what? It was not fully replaced. It was like we start to go a little bit more CVS, and then Sam's Clubs arrive, and Sam's Club was like, it's a different kind of hyper super, but it's using some of the similar tools. So when I say like the old system is not dead, it just like replaces what from with the adjustment. And when I say like, we tend to say like my mothers tend to say the world is changing, but no, the reality is like it's just like slowly evolving, and that's the reason why you are still relevant as design people, as research people, to predict what will be happening later.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. I think there was another question over there. Thank you.
Firstly, thank you for all the sharing, for all the speakers. I'm Jane. I'm also one of friends with Jimmy. And thank you for Chen's question. Chen is one of our former colleagues in FBIF. I'm very happy to see Jimmy again. We have known each other for 9 years. And you are one of my original inspiration for marketing awards or foods awards for 9 years. So I'm very grateful you can come here. And one of my questions for you today is your new inspiration. I wish to know what's your latest inspiration come from, because I have known you for many years. You always post your journey, travel, and your design in photos and or in books. I got a lot of inspiration in your design, in your team, global team management. So what's your new inspiration come from? My question is very simple.
Oh, well, that's a very, well, first of all, likewise, very happy that we know each other since a long time. It's a very tricky question to answer. I'm going to try to deviate, but answer at the end. I think if you want to be a successful designer nowadays, but if you want to be a successful entrepreneur, business person, insight, strategist, there is one very fundamental characteristic that you need to have, and is being curious. Being open-minded and being curious to get to know things that you don't know. I think the superpower of each designer is that we don't know what is going to be the result of whatever we start, right? We tend to say we are comfortable in being uncomfortable, in the way how whenever we receive a brief, we don't know what is going to be the final result. We do have a process, and then through this process we arrive at the end. But at the beginning of the process, what really drives us is curiosity. And the curiosity is about, you go outside and you see this beautiful packaging all over the place, and you get curious. You ask a question to people. You really try to understand things and to be present. The superpower that this device gave us in reaching out to everyone somehow is sometimes dangerous, because it removes our presence in the now. And I think to be curious, you need to be present in the now, in understanding what's happening around you, and try to learn from everything. Try to capture as many information as possible, being open-minded. Don't move yourself based on assumption or based on the presumption to be better than other. And if you're curious and you let yourself observe, then you can get to know more things, and then those things you might gonna utilize to create something different.
Fantastic. What about you guys?
Yeah, and expose you to other cultures, I think that's important. And not only national cultures, geographical cultures, but generational cultures. If you are a more humanistic person, try to talk with science people. Really try to get as much exposure to things you don't know about as you can.
What about you, Sophie?
No, just like it's how to explain. I'm bored with a word that is not really bringing me any inspiration. So everything in my life is I try to change something in my life, and I look around everywhere, and you don't know where creativity is coming, or where it's just like your brain that is making you're like really impressed by something that you see that is new for you. So I used to do some improv, and I was bored by doing theater, reading text, and I feel like it's really more interesting when you have to create your own story. So I live in a world where I create my own story.
There is a famous philosopher, the name is Socrates, that used to say, "I know that I know nothing." And that is a beautiful mindset, because it pushes you to every time ask why. Like before, this beautiful vase was next to the other vase, and I was like, why are the vase there? I didn't understand. And I asked Chris, and he said, these are for the panel. It's a very stupid things. But if you start to practice this why, you will get to learn and understand so many things that you might not even know that they were there because of this or that reason. So this idea of I know that I know nothing, to me, is at the core of everything we do as a creative people, because it pushes you to constantly challenge yourself and learn new things.
Amazing. If I may add to what you're saying, which is beautiful, and what you also mentioned is also beautiful. You all know that now we have AI. AI is the ultimate answering machine. You can ask anything, it will always give you an answer. So the old ways of how we were taught as students to the fastest to raise their hands, the most accurate student to answer the teacher's question was the one that had the best scores, but that doesn't apply anymore, because now we have AI and we cannot compete with that. The way we can compete is to be curious, like this, Jimmy mentioned, and to ask more questions, ask better questions, and continue to be curious about what we do. That's the value that you bring to the table.
And it comes back to exposure, making sense out of things, right? Because when you talk about AI, we all know this. We can ask a question, we get an answer back. We give this answer to the one that asked us the question without having really learned something, because we just replicated and or copied the knowledge, right? And that's why it's so important to try to make sense out of things. If you hear something, no matter if the computer says it to you or your parents or your teacher, question it if it makes sense to you. And if it doesn't make sense to you, then challenge the one that gave you this answer.
Thank you. I think we have another question over here. Thank you. Sure.
She wants to ask about AI, so which one can answer her? I can give you the translator.
Can.
Okay, you can?
Oh, no. Ask the question in with the translator.
非常非常感谢这个4位嘉宾的精彩演讲啊。
Why don't you just translate what she says?
He can answer.
Chris, can you help translate?
Yeah.
I will do the
translation.
谢谢，谢谢。
She
谢谢
said
老板。
she just expressed her gratitude to all the presentation, all the speech, to every single person sitting there.
因为我在包装界做了10多年，我的主要客户是伊利啊、蒙牛啊，还有一些国外的一些客户。
She has been working in the packaging field for decades, and her major clients were Yili, Mengniu, and also some global brands.
然后我现在跟客户探讨的比较多的问题就是人工智能，包括 AI 对设计的一个影响。有的时候客户会觉得你用了 AI 或者你参与了人工智能，那你的设计费就会要便宜一些。
So lately, there have been many discussion that she had with her clients talking about the AI generative content, and the client had a point of view that once you use the AI generation, that your your design fees should be cheaper because it's a tool that not from your own.
I'm going to go first.
Sorry, what is the question?
This is the
Sorry,
one of
this
the
is-
question.
Should it be cheaper or not?
你的问题是什么？对，第一个问题是，这个没有问题，
那个
就是你说
是
他说叫便宜之后，然后呢？
OK，行。那我就想问，就是说在各位4位就是嘉宾的一个工作中，如何更好的把 AI 和人工智能应用于设计中和包装设计中？因为人工智能出来的东西，它很多都是工业化的东西，所以如何的更好的去衔接和应用？
Okay, so what is point of view of how to integrate the AI tools into the design? I think from the first question, it was also about with that discussion point that if you use the AI tool, that your price should be cheaper. What is your point of view as well? 我也问了一下，就是说，如果client 说，就是客户说，如果你的这个品牌，你的这个工作室如果用了这个 AI tool 的话，你的价格要便宜，他们的想法是什么？对于这样子一个观点。Okay. Sorry.
Let me try to answer. Oh, he's going to do the translation. Oh, okay.
客户问你说，如果你用了 AI 的话，你的这个价格应该便宜。你想问他们的观点是什么？ Yes.
That was the question. Okay. I remember like in 2018 when I moved to China. So it was like a long time ago. I had exactly the same discussion about like AI in design strategies, about like as a market research, how we can use AI to, based on the result, develop some design. First thing, I'm not a design agency, and AI is not a design agency. And even today, if you look back today, the AI is still not a design agency. There are some of the words that we use. We use the word like people, context, environment, and another one. But it's emotion. AI is good to, I don't know, good to give you some inspiration, but you need to have like a human eyes to make the inspiration being something real. Well, I don't like AI because like I feel like it lacks a little bit of human touch. But like there is something about like we always say like if you don't bring like the right information to your AI, you will have like a bad result. If you're not able to educate your AI system to understand like a shopper behavior, environment, context, etc., your AI will be just like doing like an evolution of your packaging, and it will lack something. And there is a difference of being able to develop a packaging with AI and being able to develop a packaging with AI that is efficient on shelf. And I'm not saying no to AI because like I know that we are in China and that makes sense that everybody is talking about that. But it's not like a kind of like a miracle solution that change your life, because in reality you still need to have like human people to make sure that what you are doing is relevant.
I think, of course, it should not be cheaper when you work with AI than when you work with other tools, right? But generally speaking, I think AI is most likely indeed one of the biggest disruptions our society will go through in our lives, right? We always thought that only blue-collar jobs can be replaced by machines, and we always, our white-collar creative jobs are totally safe of this. This is not true anymore. So the question is not, should I do something with AI? Should I not do something with AI? The question is, how do I use AI, right? And that's something we all have to figure out, right? And again, things change. It's not about giving the right answer first. That's not interesting anymore. And things like speed also will not be important anymore as before, because everybody can do things at scale, at speed, with the right help, right? So the big thing will be meaning, right? We have to use AI to create meaning for our plans, for our packages, for our designs. And not AI decides, at least not yet, what this meaning is, right? I think that's where we are. Even this could change in 10 years or 5 years' time. But it's definitely not about AI yes, AI no. This is what AI can't do, this is what AI can do. There will be a point where our work might be indeed 100% replaceable.
Just like remind me like the presentation that we had like this morning about like the average American man. So that's what's from you. AI is going to give you the answer about like the average performing design, but that's not always performing in reality.
We should have another 3-hour panel to answer to this. Few thoughts. I think AI has been branded, the concept of AI, in a way that we have never experienced this in the past. If you ask me what was the biggest revolution in the world of design, was the creation of mock-up. So if you see all those boards over there, these are all mock-up. You create your design, you drag and drop into a mock-up that somebody else did and look beautiful. You might have a very ugly branding, but because the mock-up is beautiful, the design looks beautiful. That, to me, was the real revolution in design, more than AI. The difference is that your client and people that are not in the industry, they don't know that. Because before the mock-up, we used to create the 3D by ourselves, the rendering, putting the label, wrapping the label. It was much more time consuming. The fact that your client never questioned, oh, now you have a mock-up, should I pay you less? It's because they didn't know. Now with AI, because everybody talk about it, they know. So the first question I have for you is, why do they think that you deserve to be paid less now because there is the AI? And then the question can go deeper and say, what is the type of contribution that they think you are delivering for their success? Because if they look at you just as an hand, then I'm sorry, but it's game over. If they look you as a head that happen to use the hand in a certain way, that's where understanding the role that AI play is a completely different game. Now, with that said, AI at the moment have a fundamental problem, that is the IP protection. Most of the AI generating software, they are not yet legally protectable, meaning that you might end up, if you are using that for a final product, you might end up with a legal problem. So right now we are utilizing AI every single day to create mood board, inspiration, and so on, but I can guarantee you there is no one in the company that is looking at the AI as a replacement. At contrary, because we can develop the concept faster, we can spend time doing something else. So again, AI is there. I think it's beautiful. It will all give us infinite amount of opportunity. But then the problem is ultimately, back to what they were mentioning before, on today's world. We live in a world where, because of social media and everything, we are democratizing everything, also taste and point of view. Everything looks the same. We brief in the same way, we design in the same way, we evaluate in the same way, we standardize average. And that's the problem that we should avoid. So if you are utilizing AI to change the game, to tell a compelling story that is unique, that is your own story, that's great. But same as that, if everybody utilizes the same mock-up, then it's all the same. So it's not the fault of AI. It's the way how you use AI, it's the way how you use mock-up, it's the way how you evaluate, and the way how you judge.
Yeah, and just to add this one thing, and that's why it's not about the bigger, more complex language models, right? It's not about more ships that compute faster. Most energy in the next months, maybe years, will go into how to train your AI models, right? That's where you can avoid this averaging out, right? And that's the big challenge. And that's a field which could be very interesting for designers because no one really knows how to do it at this point. So a space to explore for us.
Just like it's time up, but I'm going to answer like really quickly as well. It's like what the complexity is in Shanghai is that like even if you say you don't do AI because like you don't trust in AI because like you believe in human and touch, there are some players that are doing AI. And I remember like when I start working in market research in Shanghai, there were some people that were able to do like a market research in 3 hours. And AI is exactly the same, like cheap and 3 hours. And it takes some time. You have to, the trend is passing and you, at the beginning, it's really tempting for clients because like other players are saying, I can do it, it's going to be amazing. But then they are failing and then they are coming back. So it's a bad period to go through. But people are coming back after that because like in the reality, there is nothing worse than an average pack.
This is a fascinating topic, and thank you very much for your question. Tomorrow, I would love you to come and listen to the AI debate that is going to happen. We don't have 3 hours like Jimmy promised, but we'll have at least 1 extra hour to talk about AI, and I hope I can see you all there tomorrow to talk about AI. Let me just by finishing, just a wrap up and something that I think it's also relevant regarding AI, and I believe it has not been addressed yet, and probably just a hint of what we are going to talk tomorrow. AI is being sold like this magic thing that is going to solve all the problems. And my question to you is, if I'm selling an hammer, and you come to me with a problem, what am I going to sell you? Carrots? No, I'm going to sell you a hammer. I'm going to tell you that this hammer is going to solve your problem because that's what I have to sell. So we also need to use this critical thinking. And this is marketing. We all know marketing. We should know. So we need to go beyond that. And again, thank you very much for your answers. Thank you very much for your questions. Thank you very much for coming today. And I look forward to connect with you and see you tomorrow also on the AI debate. Thank you.
谢谢，再见。
谢谢你。